The screen glowed in the silent house, a single line of text burning itself onto my retinas. Last night was a mistake, a beautiful, perfect mistake I can't wait to make again. My wife, Chloe, had sent it just hours ago. She thought she'd covered her tracks, deleted every trace of her betrayal from her phone with the meticulous care she usually reserved for staging a house. But in our hyper-connected world, secrets have ghosts. She thought she deleted the messages. She forgot about the cloud backup. My first reaction wasn't rage. It was a cold, quiet shock that felt like plunging into icy water, every nerve ending screaming at once. I could have smashed the laptop, screamed until my throat was raw, but a different, more chilling instinct took over. This wasn't just the end of my marriage, it was the beginning of something else. You think you know how this ends? Think again. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and comment below. Have you ever dealt with betrayal? Let's hear your stories. Part 1, The Hum of a Lie, 20 years. That's how long Chloe and I had been married. 2 decades of shared mortgages, sleepless nights with sick kids, inside jokes whispered across a dinner table, and the comfortable silence of 2 people who knew each other's rhythms. Or so I thought. I'm Mark, by the way, 48 years old, a senior network administrator for a mid-sized tech firm. My life was a series of logical progressions, of problems and solutions. I built secure systems. I believed in firewalls. It never occurred to me I'd need one for my own home. Lately, though, our rhythm had felt off-key. It wasn't one big thing, but 1,000 tiny, almost imperceptible shifts. It started with her phone, a device that had become a sleek black extension of her hand. It was always angled away from me, screen down on the counter, or clutched in her palm as she left the room for a call. "It's just work, honey," she'd say, a little too brightly. Chloe was a real estate agent, a damn good one, and her career had taken off in the last year. I was proud of her. I told myself the late nights, the endless texts, the weekend open houses were all part of her hustle. I was the steady, reliable bedrock. She was the one who soared. That was our deal. I'd made my own sacrifices. 5 years ago, I'd turned down a major promotion that would have meant relocating, a dream job in Seattle. But our son, Jake, was just starting high school, and our daughter, Mia, was in middle school. Chloe had just gotten her license and was building her client base. Uprooting them felt selfish, so I stayed, taking a less demanding role that paid the bills but didn't light a fire in me anymore. I didn't resent it. It was a choice I made for us, for the family. I just didn't realize I was the only one still honoring the terms of the agreement. The signs were there, humming just beneath the surface of our daily lives. A new, expensive perfume that smelled of jasmine and something else, something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't the light, floral scent she'd worn for years. This one was deeper, more complex, like a statement. Then came the gym. Chloe, who had always hated exercise, suddenly became a zealot. It was spin classes at dawn, Pilates in the evening. Her body, once soft and familiar, grew toned and taut. She looked fantastic, and I told her so, but when I reached for her in bed, she'd often feign sleep or plead exhaustion. "Long day, Mark," she'd murmur, turning away, the scent of that new perfume a ghost between us. There was a dark humor in my obliviousness. One night she came home late from a closing dinner, flushed and glowing. She talked a mile a minute about the clients, the deal, the restaurant. I listened, nodded, and warmed up her leftovers, feeling a surge of pride. I saw a successful, vibrant woman. I didn't see a liar. Looking back, it was like watching a movie where you know the killer is hiding in the closet. You want to scream at the character on screen, "Don't open the door," but he can't hear you. I couldn't hear me. The strangest part was the way she looked at me sometimes, with a flicker of what I now recognize as pity. It was a soft, sad gaze that made me feel like a project, a problem she wasn't sure how to solve. At the time, I mistook it for affection. What a fool. A loving, supportive, 48-year-old fool who still believed that love was a fortress. But I was about to learn that even the strongest walls can be breached from the inside. Part 2, The Ghost in the Machine. It happened on a Tuesday. A painfully ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday. I was working from home, a perk of my less demanding job, while the kids were at school and Chloe was out showing a property. The house was quiet except for the hum of the server rack in my home office. That was my sanctuary, a clean, orderly world of cables and code. It was the one place where everything made sense. A notification popped up on my desktop, iCloud storage almost full. It was our family account, the digital attic where 20 years of photos, contacts, and documents were stored. Annoyed at the prospect of paying for a higher tier, I decided to do some digital spring cleaning. I started with the photos, deleting duplicates of family vacations and blurry pictures of the dog. It was a nostalgic trip down memory lane, Mia's first steps, Jake's kindergarten graduation, Chloe and I goofy and young on our honeymoon in Italy. A dull ache settled in my chest. We were happy then. Weren't we still? I clicked through folders, clearing out old backups from devices we no longer owned, and then I saw it. A folder I didn't recognize, labeled simply synced messages. It was nestled between iPhone backups and notes. My first thought was that it was a system glitch, some remnant from an old software update. Curiosity, the trait that makes me a good IT guy, got the better of me. I clicked it. Inside were thousands of files, neatly organized by date. They were iMessage and WhatsApp logs. My blood ran cold. I knew Chloe had recently switched to a new phone. She'd made a big deal about setting it up herself, insisting she didn't need my help. "I've got it, tech wizard," she'd laughed, tapping away at the screen. She must have synced her old messages to the cloud and forgotten to disable the feature on her new device. And she must have thought that deleting them from her phone meant they were gone forever. A rookie mistake. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic trapped bird. This felt wrong, a violation of privacy. But a louder, more primal instinct took over, the need to know. My hand trembled as I clicked on the most recent log. It opened into a sea of blue and gray bubbles, a conversation stretching back over a year. The contact was Julian. The name sounded vaguely familiar. I thought he was a developer she worked with. The first few months of messages were professional, stilted. Then the tone shifted. It started with a compliment on her dress at a conference, an emoji here, a late night you up, there. It was a slow, insidious burn. "Julian, you were on fire in that meeting today. They didn't stand a chance. Chloe, just doing my job, you weren't so bad yourself. Julian, we make a good team. We should celebrate, drinks, just us." I scrolled faster, my breath catching in my throat. The messages became more intimate, more desperate. They were filled with inside jokes I didn't understand, complaints about her boring home life, and a yearning that was like a physical blow. He made her feel seen, she said, alive, and then I found the explicit stuff, the fantasies. The pictures, not just of them but of her, pictures she had never sent me, poses I had never seen. They had a hotel, a favorite one, their place. They had nicknames. He called her Firefly. I hadn't called her a nickname in years. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just a flirtation. This was a parallel life, a life where she was vibrant and desired, and I was the clueless, beige-colored husband holding her back. I kept scrolling, driven by a morbid need to see it all. I found the messages from the night of her closing dinner. She hadn't been with clients, she'd been with him. And then I found the one that stopped my world from turning. The one from that very morning. "Chloe, last night was a mistake, a beautiful, perfect mistake I can't wait to make again. Julian, it's not a mistake if it feels this right. Tell me you're thinking about me. Chloe, always." She had sent that while I was downstairs making her coffee, just the way she liked it. She had kissed my cheek on her way out the door, her phone clutched in her hand, her lips still warm from telling another man she loved him. The logical part of my brain, the network administrator, took over. It was a strange, out-of-body experience. With detached precision, I created a new, encrypted folder on an external hard drive. I downloaded every single log. Every message, every photo, every damning piece of evidence. I backed it up 3 times. It was the only thing I could control in a world that had just spun off its axis. When I was done, I closed the laptop, walked into the bathroom, and threw up. Part 3. The anatomy of a heartbreak. The hours after the discovery were a blur of silent, screaming chaos inside my head. I walked through the rooms of our house, the house I had helped build, and saw everything through a new, tainted filter. The king-sized bed we shared felt like a crime scene. The framed family photos on the wall felt like props from a play where I was the only actor who didn't know his lines were a joke. My mind became a torture chamber of flashbacks. I saw Chloe laughing at a joke I told last week, and now I wondered if she was comparing my humor to his. I remembered our last anniversary, how she seemed distracted, and now I knew she was probably texting him under the table. I saw us making love a month ago, a rare occasion, and the memory once cherished was now poisoned by the question, was she thinking of him? It was a unique and exquisite form of self-torture. Rage was the first wave. It was a hot, blinding fury. I wanted to break things. I wanted to call her and scream until my voice gave out. I imagined confronting them, catching them at their place, the righteous fury of the wronged husband. The mental images were vivid, cinematic, and deeply unsatisfying. What would it accomplish? A broken hand and a restraining order. Then came the second wave, a crushing, suffocating sadness. This was the woman I had built a life with. The mother of my children. I remembered her 25-year-old self, full of fire and dreams, crying with laughter as we danced in the rain on our second date. I remembered holding her hand while she was in labor with Jake, feeling like my heart would burst with love for her and this new life we'd created. Where did that woman go? When did I lose her? And that led to the third, most insidious wave, self-doubt. The messages were a brutal critique of our life, of me. I was predictable, safe, boring. I didn't challenge her. I didn't excite her. For years, I thought providing a stable, loving home was my primary function. I wore my reliability like a badge of honor. To her, it had become a cage. Had I been so focused on being a good provider that I had forgotten how to be a good partner? Had I let the spark die through sheer neglect? The thought was a venomous serpent coiling around my heart. It was the ultimate gaslighting, but it was coming from inside my own head. I couldn't eat, I couldn't think. I sat in my silent office, the external hard drive on my desk feeling as heavy as a tombstone. I had to decide what to do. The old Mark, the predictable Mark, would have confronted her immediately. There would have been tears, recriminations, and a messy, painful implosion. We'd go to therapy where she would talk about feeling neglected, and I would talk about being betrayed, and we'd spend thousands of dollars for a stranger to tell us we were speaking different languages. But seeing her words, her raw, unfiltered desires laid bare, had changed something in me. The shock had burned away the complacency. The man who had turned down a promotion to avoid rocking the boat was gone. In his place was someone colder, more methodical. She had mistaken my kindness for weakness. She and this Julian character had laughed at my expense. They thought I was a fool. A new thought, sharp and clear as a diamond, cut through the emotional fog. She doesn't get to control this narrative. She doesn't get to be the victim, the misunderstood wife who strayed because her oaf of a husband didn't appreciate her. No, I had the truth, and the truth, I was beginning to realize, was a weapon. The debate raged within me. Part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to salvage something from the wreckage. But the new, harder part of me wanted justice. Not loud, chaotic revenge, but something more elegant, something she would never see coming. I thought about the life she had built on my foundation of loyalty and sacrifice. I thought about her smug confidence, her belief that she had successfully firewalled her 2 lives. She was a real estate agent. She knew all about appearances, about staging a house to hide its flaws. She had staged our entire marriage. Well, I was about to conduct a final inspection, and I was going to burn the whole fraudulent structure to the ground. The decision settled over me not with anger, but with a chilling, profound calm. The heartbreak was still there, a deep, resonant ache, but now it had a purpose. Part 4, the actress in the audience. I chose my role, the loving, slightly oblivious husband. It was a part I had been playing unknowingly for the past year, so slipping back into it wasn't difficult. It was, however, the hardest performance of my life. That evening when Chloe came home, I had to force the muscles in my face to form a smile. "Hey, you," she said, dropping her keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, the one we bought in Tuscany. She breezed past me, kissing the air near my cheek. The scent of her expensive new perfume filled the space between us. Long day. "I swear this buyer is going to be the death of me." "You'll win him over," I said, my voice sounding unnervingly normal. "You always do," she smiled, a brief, distracted flash of teeth. "I'm going to hop in the shower before dinner." As the water ran, I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the granite countertop. I was an audience of one, watching a masterclass in deception. Every word, every gesture was a lie. When she came downstairs, wrapped in a fluffy bathrobe, her hair damp, she looked like my wife. She looked like the woman I had loved for 20 years, but she was a stranger. The next few days were a surreal exercise in restraint. I observed her with the detached curiosity of a scientist studying a particularly duplicitous specimen. I watched her text under the dinner table, her thumb a blur across the screen. I saw the secretive smile that played on her lips when she thought I wasn't looking. One afternoon, I was in my office when I overheard her on the phone in the hallway. Her voice was low and musical, a tone she never used with me anymore. "No, he has no idea," she murmured. "He's Mark, he's steady, he trusts me." A pause. I could almost hear Julian's voice on the other end. I know, it's not fair to him. But what about me? Don't I deserve to be happy, to feel this? Her words were a cocktail of guilt and entitlement. It was fascinating. She wasn't a one-dimensional villain. In her own story, she was the heroine escaping a life of quiet desperation. She felt trapped, and this affair was her grand escape. Hearing it didn't excuse her actions, but it did crystallize her character. She wasn't just cheating, she was justifying it, painting me as the gentle, clueless warden of her prison. It was a narrative that protected her from her own conscience. I decided to test the waters. That Friday, I suggested we open a bottle of the good wine, a Brunello we'd been saving. "What's the occasion?" she asked, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. "Does there need to be one?" I replied, keeping my smile easy. "It's been a while since we just sat and talked." We sat on the back patio as dusk settled, the wine glowing ruby in our glasses. I asked about her work, her new listings. I was fishing, gently casting a line into her sea of lies. I mentioned the name just once. "You're working with that developer Julian on the new condo project, right? How's that going?" Her composure was flawless, she didn't even flinch. "Oh, it's going well. Julian's a shark, a real pro. He's demanding, but he knows what he wants." She took a slow sip of her wine, her eyes meeting mine over the rim of the glass. "It's a huge opportunity for me." "That's great, honey," I said, the words tasting like ash. "I'm really proud of you." It was the gaslighting that was the most infuriating, the way she would rewrite our reality in real time. If I seemed distant, she'd ask, "Is everything okay, Mark? You seem stressed." If I questioned a late night, she'd sigh with theatrical weariness. "Honey, you know how demanding this job is. I need your support, not an interrogation." She was making me the problem. My suspicion was the issue, not her betrayal. The dynamic was maddening, but it was also fueling the cold resolve that was growing inside me. She was so confident in her performance, so certain of her audience. She had no idea the audience had already read the script, knew the ending, and was just waiting for the perfect moment to bring the curtain down. Every lie she told, every act of condescension was another piece of evidence, not for a court of law, but for the court of her own downfall. She was the actress, the director, and the writer of her own tragedy. I was just the stagehand who was about to set the scene for the final act. Part 5. Forging an unlikely sword, the initial shock had morphed into a state of hyperclarity. My grief wasn't gone, but I had compartmentalized it, packed it away in a lead-lined box in the corner of my mind. My primary focus now was strategy. The emotional, heartbroken husband was benched. The methodical network administrator was now in charge. My first move was to secure the evidence. The triple backed-up hard drive was my holy grail. I spent hours poring over the messages, not as a wounded spouse, but as an analyst. I created a timeline, cross-referencing texts with credit card statements and our shared digital calendar. The late night at the office, that was a $300 dinner at a fancy downtown restaurant. The weekend real estate conference in a nearby city, that was a 2-night stay at a boutique hotel, their place. The hypocrisy was staggering. She had complained about my purchase of a new lawnmower last month, yet she was funding a second life on our joint account. Every detail, every lie, was documented in a password-protected file. I gave it a code name, Project Chimera, a fitting name, I thought, for a beast made of disparate parts that was about to breathe fire, but I knew I couldn't do this alone. My emotions were too raw, too close to the surface. I needed a clear-headed ally, someone who wouldn't just offer a sympathetic ear but would help me sharpen the sword. I called my younger sister, Sarah. Sarah was a divorce attorney. A shark, just like Chloe had described Julian, but one who hunted on the right side of the moral ocean. She was sharp, pragmatic, and had a zero-tolerance policy for bullshit. When I showed up at her office on a Saturday morning, she took one look at my face and knew it was bad. Okay, Mark, spill it, she said, closing the door and pouring me a cup of coffee that was strong enough to dissolve steel. I told her everything, from the suspicious perfume to the cloud backup. I didn't get emotional. I laid it out like a case file, detailing the facts. When I finished, I slid the hard drive across her mahogany desk. She was silent for a long time, her expression unreadable. She plugged the drive into her laptop and began to read. I watched her eyes scan the messages, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. She scrolled through the pictures, her face a mask of professional neutrality, but I saw a flicker of fury in her eyes. She wasn't just my lawyer, she was my little sister. She had looked up to Chloe. When she finally looked up at me, her voice was quiet but lethal. The sheer, unmitigated gall of this woman, she breathed. Mark, this is comprehensive. This isn't just an affair, it's a conspiracy to defraud you of your life. That was the validation I needed. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. So what do? I asked. What do you want to do? She countered, her lawyer mode fully engaged. Do you want to save the marriage? I thought about it for a second. The old me might have said yes, but the old me was gone. No, I said, the word solid and sure. I want to exit this marriage with my dignity, my fair share of our assets, and the full custody of my peace of mind. And honestly, Sarah, I want her to know that I know. I want her to understand the full scope of her deceit and the stupidity of her thinking she could get away with it. A slow, wolfish grin spread across Sarah's face. Okay, then we don't move until we're ready. No emotional confrontations. No tipping our hand, we get our ducks in a row, financially, legally. You become a ghost, you gather intel, and you do not engage. Over the next few weeks, Sarah became my general. We met in secret, planning our campaign. She had me quietly move half of our joint savings into a new account in my name. She had me document every asset, every investment. We were preparing for war while Chloe thought we were still at peace. There was a strange, dark thrill in the process. It was like a high-stakes chess game. Every time Chloe would lie to my face, I would feel a grim satisfaction, knowing that her words were just digging her own grave deeper. My witty asides were internal now, a running commentary in my head. When she talked about needing a new car because hers was getting unreliable, I'd think, almost as unreliable as your wedding vows. When she complimented my patience, I'd think, oh, you have no idea. My greatest source of strength, my unexpected ally turned out to be the evidence itself. Whenever my resolve wavered, whenever a wave of sadness threatened to pull me under, I would read the messages. I would look at the pictures. It was a painful, self-flagellating act, but it worked. It reminded me of who she had become. It was the antidote to the 20 years of love that kept trying to excuse her. It was the cold, hard truth forged into a sword. And we were almost ready to wield it. Part 6, The Silent Witness, the perfect stage for the final act, presented itself on a silver platter. Chloe's parents, David and Alina, were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. They were good people, the salt of the earth, who had welcomed me into their family like a son. The thought of hurting them was the only thing that gave me pause, but my betrayal wasn't the one that would cause the pain. I was just the messenger. Chloe naturally had taken charge of planning the party. It was to be a grand affair held at our house. Caterers, a string quartet, 100 guests. It was a classic Chloe production, all about appearances, a perfect facade for a perfect family. And in her typical brazen fashion, she had invited Julian. He's been such a huge help with the waterfront development project, she'd announced casually one evening. It's good for business to have him there, networking. I just nodded, my face a carefully constructed mask of mild indifference. Sure, honey, whatever you think is best. Inside, I felt a jolt of savage glee. It was perfect. She was bringing the weapon of her own destruction right into our home. The week before the party was a flurry of activity. Florists, caterers, and rental companies were in and out of the house. Chloe was in her element, directing everyone with the efficiency of a field marshal, phone pressed to her ear. She was energized, radiant. The secret thrill of her affair, combined with the excitement of the party, made her glow. She had never been more beautiful or more grotesque to me. My own preparations were quieter. The centerpiece of the party was to be a digital slideshow, a journey through David and Alina's 50 years together. Chloe had tasked me with the technical side of it, setting up the large-screen TV in the living room, connecting the laptop, making sure the presentation ran smoothly. "You're the tech wizard after all," she'd said with a wink, unknowingly handing me the keys to the kingdom. I spent hours in my office compiling the slideshow. I scanned old photos of her parents' wedding, their early years, family vacations. Interspersed with these were pictures of our own family, of Chloe and me, young and in love, of the day Jake was born, of Mia's first ballet recital. It was a painful, poignant task. Each photo was a memory of a life I thought was real. Then I created a second presentation. This one was different. It had a black background. The text was a stark, simple white. It was a chronological compilation of the most damning text messages between Chloe and Julian. I interspersed them with the photos she had sent him, the selfies in her car, the pictures from their hotel room. I even included screenshots of the credit card statements that lined up with their trysts. It was a meticulous, brutal, and undeniable narrative of her betrayal. I saved this second file onto a small, innocuous USB drive, which I kept in my pocket at all times. I configured the laptop so that I could switch between the two presentations with a single, discrete keystroke. The day of the party, I was a bundle of coiled nerves and icy calm. I moved through the house, helping with last-minute preparations, greeting guests, playing the part of the gracious host. I saw Chloe welcome Julian at the door. I watched as she introduced him to her father, her hand lingering on his arm for a fraction of a second too long. Julian was exactly what I expected. Handsome in a slick, predictable way, with an expensive watch and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He shook my hand, his grip firm. "Mark, good to finally meet you," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "Chloe speaks so highly of you. She's a great judge of character," I replied, my smile feeling like a crack in a porcelain mask. Throughout the evening I watched them. They were careful but not careful enough. A shared glance across the room. A brief moment standing too close by the bar. They were getting away with it, right in front of everyone, drunk on their own arrogance. They had no idea they were standing in a theater, on a stage I had built, and the silent witness, the TV screen behind them, was waiting for its cue. Part 7, A Toast to the Truth. The party was in full swing. Laughter and music filled the rooms, spilling out onto the manicured lawn. The string quartet was playing something by Vivaldi. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It was the picture of suburban success, a beautifully crafted illusion, my illusion. After the main course, David, Chloe's father, stood up to give a toast. He spoke lovingly of his wife, Elena, of their 50 years of partnership, compromise, and unwavering loyalty. The word hung in the air, a bitter irony only I could taste. Everyone applauded, misty-eyed. Then Chloe stood up. She was magnificent. She spoke with eloquence and warmth about her parents' example, about the importance of family, and the foundation of trust upon which all great loves are built. She looked over at me and smiled, a public performance of affection. "And I'm so lucky to have my own rock," she said, raising her glass to me. "My husband, Mark." The room echoed with awes. I smiled back, a dead man smiling. Julian, standing near the fireplace, watched her with a smug, proprietary look on his face. Then it was my turn. "I'd like to say a few words as well," I announced, my voice steady. A hush fell over the room. I walked to the front, standing beside the large TV where the slideshow of her parents' life had been playing on a loop. I picked up my champagne flute. "David, Elena, 50 years. It's an inspiration," I began, my eyes scanning the crowd, meeting the faces of friends and family, people who had celebrated our wedding, who had held our children as babies. My gaze rested on Chloe. She was beaming with pride. "A marriage, a partnership, is built on a million small moments, shared secrets, private jokes, and absolute unconditional trust." I paused, letting the word trust settle. It's about showing the person you love your truest self. But in our modern world, it's so easy to have other secrets, isn't it? To live a life in the cloud, so to speak. I saw a flicker of confusion in Chloe's eyes. She didn't get it yet. "We put everything online," I continued, my voice conversational, almost academic. "Our photos, our documents, even our messages. It's all backed up, kept safe in case we ever lose it. It's a wonderful technology. It ensures nothing is ever truly deleted, nothing is ever truly forgotten." I reached into my pocket and my fingers closed around the small remote for the laptop. With my other hand, I raised my glass. So I'd like to make a toast, I said, my voice dropping slightly, drawing everyone in, to truth, to transparency, and to the ghosts in the machine. I looked directly at Chloe. Her smile had vanished. A knot of apprehension was tightening her features. For instance, I said, and I recited from memory, my voice clear and cold. A message like, last night was a mistake, a beautiful, perfect mistake I can't wait to make again. A collective gasp went through the room. Chloe's face went white as a sheet. Her eyes, wide with horror, darted from me to Julian. And then with a single click of the remote, I switched the presentation. The screen flickered. The happy photos of David and Alina vanished. In their place, a black screen with white text appeared. The first message. Julian's name at the top, the date, silence. A profound, absolute silence that swallowed the music and the laughter whole. I clicked again. Another message appeared, and again. A picture of Chloe, one I had never seen, smiling seductively into the camera, filled the 65-inch screen. People were turning, staring from the screen to Chloe, to a now panicked Julian. I didn't say another word. I just stood there, clicking the remote every 5 seconds, letting the silent witness tell the story. The explicit plans, the complaints about our marriage, the hotel receipts. It was a slow, methodical, and brutal vivisection of her lies, performed in front of her family and friends. Chloe's mother, Alina, let out a small, strangled sob. Her father looked as if he'd been physically struck. Chloe was frozen, her mouth slightly agape, the color drained from her face. Julian was already moving, sidling toward the door like the coward he was. I clicked one last time, displaying a screenshot of their hotel booking for the following weekend. Then I set the remote down on the mantelpiece, took a calm sip of my champagne, and looked at my wife. The party's over, Chloe. Part 8, the Rubble and the Rebirth. The silence shattered. It wasn't one sound, but a symphony of chaos. Alina's sob turned into a full-blown wail. David, his face a thundercloud of rage, took a step toward Chloe, his fingers shaking as he pointed at the screen. What is this? What have you done? Chloe finally broke from her paralysis. Her first instinct, true to form, was denial and deflection. Mark, how could you? This is fake. You doctored this. Her voice was shrill, hysterical, but no one was buying it. The evidence was too specific, too personal. The spell of the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, was irrevocably broken. Her friends were staring at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. Julian had already slipped out the back door, abandoning her on the battlefield I had created. I didn't engage, I didn't scream. I just stood there, a calm island in the hurricane of my own making. I had said everything I needed to say. The screen was my voice now. The argument that followed was biblical. It was between Chloe and her parents, a primal roar of disappointment and shame. I simply turned, walked through the stunned crowd, went upstairs to the bedroom we had shared, and picked up a small duffel bag I had packed that morning. It contained a change of clothes, my toiletries, and the external hard drive. As I walked down the stairs, Chloe saw me. The fight with her parents stopped. Her eyes, wild with panic, locked onto mine. Mark, don't you walk away from me. We need to talk about this. No, Chloe, I said, my voice devoid of heat. You needed to talk about this a year ago. We're done talking. I walked out the front door into the cool night air, leaving behind the smoldering rubble of our life. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove to a clean, anonymous hotel room that I had booked under my own name with my own money. The moment I closed the hotel room door behind me, the adrenaline that had been coursing through my veins for days finally receded, and I collapsed onto the bed. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt empty. The war was over. Now I had to figure out how to live in the peace. The days that followed were a blur of voicemails and texts, apologies, accusations, threats, and pleas from Chloe, concerned calls from friends. An apoplectic message from Julian's wife, an unforeseen but not entirely unwelcome consequence. She had apparently been at the party. Sarah handled it all. She was my firewall, intercepting everything, allowing me the space to breathe. The rebirth was slow. It started small. The first morning I woke up in the hotel and realized I didn't have to listen for the sound of another person's breathing. The first meal I ate that I had chosen, without compromise. The first time I went for a long drive with the music turned up loud just because I could. I focused on my kids. I sat down with Jake and Mia, who were 19 and 16 now and old enough to understand. I told them the truth, simply and without vitriol. I told them that sometimes adults make mistakes they can't fix, that their mother and I were getting a divorce, but that we both loved them unconditionally. It was the hardest conversation of my life, but their quiet understanding was a balm on my raw soul. I found a new apartment, a clean, modern space that had no memories attached. I bought new furniture. I started going to the gym, not to change my body for someone else, but to reclaim it for myself, to sweat out the years of accumulated stress and sadness. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected. I even started tinkering with a side project, a passion for network security I had put on the back burner years ago. A fire was starting to light in me again, a fire I thought had long since gone out. Part 9, alternate endings, one path in the quiet moments, usually late at night. My mind would drift to the forks in the road. What if I hadn't found the messages? I'd still be in that house, a cheerful, oblivious fool living in a beautifully staged lie. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Ignorance would not have been bliss, it would have been a life sentence in a fool's paradise. What if I had confronted her quietly? I pictured the scene, the tearful confession, the promises to end it, the agonizing sessions of marriage counseling. Maybe we could have rebuilt. But what would we have been rebuilding with? The foundation of trust was not just cracked, it had been pulverized. Every late night, every text, every moment of distance would have been a fresh torment. It would have been a half-life haunted by the ghost of her betrayal. Forgiveness is one thing, but forgetting is another. I knew I could never forget. The man who could have forgiven her was the same man she had cheated on. He didn't exist anymore. The path I chose was brutal, scorched earth. There was collateral damage, and I had to own that. Her parents were devastated. Our mutual friends were forced to choose sides. It was messy and public. But it was also clean, a surgical strike. It left no room for doubt, no space for her to manipulate the narrative. It was the only way to ensure that the lies stopped for good. The divorce, with Sarah at the helm and my mountain of evidence, was swift and decisive. Chloe, stripped of her leverage, had no choice but to be agreeable. The house was sold, the assets were split. I didn't fight for more than my fair share. This wasn't about money, it was about freedom. My real victory wasn't in the courtroom, it was in the quiet moments of my new life. It was in rediscovering my own worth, separate from my role as a husband or father. It was realizing that steady and reliable were not insults, they were my strengths. Chloe had seen them as a cage, but they were my foundation. And on that foundation I could build anything I wanted. Part 10, the echo of a deleted message 6 months after the party. My life had found a new, quiet rhythm. My apartment felt like home. My new consulting gig was challenging and exciting. My relationship with my kids, built on a new foundation of honesty, had never been stronger. The deep ache in my chest had faded to a dull, distant scar. One evening my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mark, it's me. I know you probably hate me and you have every right to. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I was lost and I made a terrible mess. I hope one day you can forgive me." I read the message from Chloe twice. The old Mark would have felt a pang of sympathy, a flicker of the old love. He would have agonized over how to respond. He might have even called her. But I wasn't the old Mark. I thought about her apology. It was all about her. I was lost. I made a mess. It was the same self-centered narrative she had been spinning all along. She wasn't sorry for betraying me. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry her perfect life had imploded. I looked at the message, at the echo of a life I had left behind. There was no anger, no bitterness. There was just nothing. A quiet neutrality. It held no power over me anymore. With a steady thumb, I held down on the message. A small menu popped up. I tapped block number. Then I tapped delete conversation. It was gone, wiped clean, no backup. No ghost in the machine. I had my own cloud now, a mental space filled with new plans, new hopes, and a hard-won peace. And in that cloud, there was no longer any room for her. I took a deep breath, put my phone down, and went back to living my life. If this story hit home, like and subscribe for more gripping tales of love and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you forgive or seek revenge? Check out the next video popping up now for another twist-filled saga.